All right, we are live, and everybody that is joining us over in the group chat for the event, hopefully will be jumping over here to the comment section and engaging with us there. But to get us started, everybody, I want to say happy Third Thursday. We're here with a group of experts to talk about digital transformation, and we are so excited for everybody to be here. I want to get confirmation that we are live and make sure that everybody's got access to us here before we dive into our actual discussion. So let's just double check that.
I think we're live. I clicked.
We are. I see it, and we're going. So everyone will be joining us here in the chat as we are doing our interview or our introductions on our end and getting going with that. Feel free to jump into the chat and let us know in the comments where you guys are joining us from and do an intro of yours as well. But to get started, we're going to head on over to Suspender Man, and I'm going to ask you, Lasse, to do a quick introduction for everybody. And then, as is the tradition that we started during our last discussion, I've got a quick question to kind of break the ice as we all get going here. So let's start with the introductions, and then I'll throw the question your way.
Hi, the reason I'm wearing the suspenders is actually I hope Wayne Butterfield is here because he said he wore a bow tie last time, and then I said, oh, I'm going to wear the suspenders then to be my thing. So that's why I'm not wearing it all the time, but and I do have pants on. Anyway, my name is Rindom. I am sorry guys. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Baker Tilly, Denmark. I am a major in history, in Ottoman Empire, court history, and early modern French history. But I've always looked for long lines and sort of just jumped into digital tools. So immediately I got into my professional career and started working in IT and business instead. I'm always looking to uncover the truth and asking questions. And I have sort of all my life been working between systems to optimize data flows. And that's basically what I'm doing today, trying to get all of these new modern tools and digitalization efforts deeper into the SMB market with Baker Tilly in my current role.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So now I'm going to ask you my icebreaker question, and each one of you are going to have the opportunity to share what you think is a myth that's common about digital transformation. And I pulled this question from some comments that I've been getting on recent posts, so I know that this is something everybody's interested in. So if you've got a myth different than what these guys are going to share, put it into the comments. But what is your myth? Lasse?
Hello? Yeah, sorry, I just switched out. You asked me now, right? Okay, a myth I commonly hear is that you can start. Sorry, a myth I commonly hear is that you can start small with your digital transformation, right? And I think that's a complete misunderstanding and frankly a piece of bullshit, right? You should always aim to define the hero. What do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What are you aiming for? Not in technology, but functionality. What would be an ideal state? And to get to that, you need to know your current state. You have to know how to get from now to tomorrow, and starting small, and like with your glasses on and you can't see anything, will just make a lot of mess down the line. Except, and this is what I also say, if it's in your enterprise architecture modeling efforts, then you can start small. But generally, always aim big, look big, think big. You need to do that if you want to get a real good digital transformation. Starting small with a small tool will get you nowhere.
Okay. Thank you. I know that's an opinion that's a little different than everyone else's, and I'm sure we'll continue to kind of expand on that idea. So now we're going to look at Faisal for your quick introduction, and then you'll have your crack at that myth question as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emma. So hi, everyone. Faisal Iftikhar. I lead the intelligent automation practice at Cyclum. I've been working in the automation space now for just about 7 years now. I've got the war scars in terms of work for a large telecoms company, set up their automation center of excellence and drove out the first couple of automations there. And since then, I've just been working in consulting and working with a number of different organizations, helping them get the most value from their automation and scale their automation programs. And I worked very closely with Kieran during my time as well, which is a lovely experience. I wouldn't say anything else. And then prior to my automation experience, management consultant by trade, so I learned all of my kind of stripes in the Big Four before I had my industry experience. So myth about digital transformations, the one that I'm going to pick is it's not about just a single technology. So some people seem to think that a single technology will be able to solve all of your problems and all of your issues. It's not just about that. It's a multitude of technologies, and you need to really have that strategic roadmap in place. And I'm going to cheat as well and just do a very quick second myth as well, and just say, because we're talking technology, it's not all about technology, right? You've got to be thinking about the whole wider piece as well. So think about it from your people side, think about it from your process side, your governance, etc. So really encapsulate all of that in there as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. And you guys all got a bonus one. We didn't know that second one was coming. So this is like real live television here.
There's other surprises as well.
So then, Kieran, I'm looking for you to do your quick introduction and then share your myth as well.
Okay, I have to do a quick introduction then. So I've been in technology business for 25 years. I've sat between both teams, and I like to think of myself as a translation specialist. I understand business, I understand tech, and when you put those two things together, I think great things can happen. Hopefully I've been responsible for some of those over the years, and hopefully many more to come. Myth then. My myth is that digital transformation takes forever, or it takes a long time. I think the thing we discovered in 2020 with COVID, which is a terrible thing, is that when we all work together, and when we need to work together, when we're focused on delivering for each other, and when companies care and customers, employees put, the customer and everyone else at the center of what they're doing, then the technology comes a little bit second. It just all works. For years, we've put out plans 3 and 5 years. This year, we've had 9 months to get things to work, and it works. Can it be better? Yes, it can. But if you want to do something and you want to make it work, it truly can.
Wonderful. Just a quick introduction for anybody on the line that's not familiar with me. Apparently, I am the baby of the group with about 7 years of experience in this space. For anybody that's familiar with me, I came from the education world, which is what has driven me to start looking at all of these different types of educational videos that we can put forward to help people figure out what in the heck is going on in this world of digital transformation. And so with that, we're going to dive into our questions that I've got for everybody today to talk a little bit more about this idea of scaling your automation. So great, maybe you've started to dabble in technology and transformation, but where do you go to really make the most of your investments and start scaling those efforts across the organization? So to get us started, Faisal, I'm going to look to you, and my question is going to be, more and more frequently, we're hearing organizations talk about operational innovation being closely tied to their digital transformation. And so my question to you is, when we're looking to scale, should we be looking to start with that business plan or an automation strategy?
Yeah, so Emma, I'd just like to start off by just doing the merits of the automation strategy to start off with, in terms of how important it is to have an automation strategy if you're going to scale your automation program. The number of organizations that I go in and speak to that have commenced their journey or have dabbled with automation, but haven't actually got the value that they thought they were going to get from it. And then when you ask them the key question around, do you have a strategy that underpins this? The answer is no. So it's a bit of a challenge to kind of really measure the success of your program if you haven't started off with a strategy, or if you have started off with a strategy and you've not kept reinventing or kept evolving it. But in answer to your question, Emma, the business plan always has to come first. You can't write an automation strategy without understanding what the business's overall strategy is. That is absolutely key. So, for example, organization that I'm working with right now, the key business drivers for them are, want to drive operational efficiency, want to drive compliance, and we've acquired a number of different businesses and we want to do an integration of their brands. You can then develop the automation strategy on the back of that business strategy. You don't want to be doing it the other way around, because you may miss a number of objectives, or you may even contradict what the objectives are of the business. One of the key things also to highlight as well is it's also important to understand the art of the possible with an automation strategy as well, because then that can really impact and influence what your business strategy is.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to play off of that idea of the art of possible a little bit here, because this is something that, as we were talking about it as a group, was something that is near and dear to my heart. Because when you're looking at bringing in powerful solution suites to organizations, sometimes you may be bringing in those tools to help solve a specific business problem and not really identifying all of the other ways and capabilities that are present within that automation suite that can be leveraged across the organization in this scaling effort. And so one of the things that I do with my clients pretty frequently is have conversations and do presentations around this idea of the art of the possible, and really give people the opportunity to understand what that technology is capable of doing for their organization. And then back to what you were saying, Faisal, looking at how does that integrate with those business strategies and help them achieve other goals that have been identified within the organization. And so it's a little bit of like the chicken or the egg conversation sometimes when you're using this type of technology, because I don't think you can clear cut, yes, we've got a business strategy, now we're bringing in the technology at this point, because most organizations have some sort of tool set available. So you need to do like a survey of what those technical capabilities are at the same time that you're building that strategy to allow those to kind of play off of one another. All right, so now we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and we're gonna take a look at, I'm gonna kind of poke on you, Lasse, because of some of the conversations that we've been having going back and forth on LinkedIn posts and comments here that inspired this question. And I'm looking at the idea of why is it important for organizations to leverage a collection of different technologies rather than just one solution as they're looking at scaling their automation journey?
Well, I'd say, it's not just about, finding one solution. A lot of these solutions that you have, a lot of the portfolio, you have suites, you have a lot of capabilities in it. So if we're talking about that or solutions, I think you need to talk about solution stack, technologies wise, right? And frankly, automation as it is understood today, it has been many things over the years, is about moving data between systems. Use cases are concerned with reporting, controlling, registration primarily. And I'd actually say that you have to look at the Microsoft Power Platform, including Power BI as a strategic example. Flows for easy connections, iPaaS for large volumes, low-code applications easy to build for digital capture and automation of input, BI for reporting. It should not be necessary to mention, but I've seen so many reports being done with RPA in Excel, and it's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And then you should always only use RPA for connecting what cannot be done with other tools. Why? Because RPA is a brittle tool and it's always built, on top of the UI, which is not meant to be automated like that and integrated through the UI, meaning that RPA is an amazing tool for connecting what cannot be connected otherwise. But frankly, it is the best of the worst solutions. That's why we need it, but we shouldn't use it as the first solution. There's a lot of better solutions before RPA, and I think that's an important point to make. Always remember that some things comes before the worst solutions, which is, as I mentioned before, the better solutions. For me, automation is about tying a spider's web between your enterprise architecture. And as such, you need spiders ready at hand, easy to implement, cheap to build, but non-labor intensive operations models. You need scalability, the ability to move quickly, more than you actually need scale. And that's my key point today. You should not aim for scale, you should aim for scalability. You should aim for having automation technologies native in your organization, multiple of them, frameworks for working with them, people you can call on with at a low rate, getting it done, getting it quickly done, getting it documented the right standard way, and then moving forward immediately. That is also the core of what Horses for Sources are saying at the moment about scaling and about automation, is it has to be native in the organization and not something that's driving a strategy. It's just something that's there. I've said it multiple times on LinkedIn about RPA that I think RPA will not become, the big digital transformation tool. It's not a strategy. I'd say it is. Everyone wants to be the empire of the ERP revolution, right? But there will never be another Roman Empire like that. Oh, and there's the history major again. What you'll see is that RPA will become maybe a duchy in the empire of automation or empire of enterprise architecture, but it will never be the driving force. You need to have multiple duchies to make up an empire. That's my point, basically.
I like that idea of multiple technologies to make your empire. And before we switch gears, I do want to just address one question that came in from Wayne Butterfield asking about where the bow ties are this time. Wayne, you may have missed it earlier on, but the suspenders are the fill-in this time around for the conversation. And in our hearts, you are the #1 bow tie man.
So only one bow tie man in the world, and that is Wayne, and we appreciate it.
So now we're going to move into our next question, and this one, Kieran, I'm coming for you with this one. Looking at what are the biggest impediments that you've seen with your experience in scalability or scale like we're talking about today?
I think maybe you should give me a time limit in this because there's probably quite a few in here, but let me try and divide them into 3 things. 1 is skill set, 2 is mindset, and 3 is probably tool set. And there's so many things that you could subcategorize underneath each of those. So for example, if you have an inexperienced team who you haven't trained, no center of expertise, then that's not going to work. Who's the team who's going to try and build this out? If you're missing executive sponsorship, it's not a top 5 item. If an executive sponsor isn't going to give you time, funding, or more importantly, sometimes butt covering, then you're on your own. And I think that's going to cause problems as well. The one that I've written about this several times is, not having a good business case can limit scaling. If you want the funding, you're going to have something there that stacks up financially. And if your automation program doesn't stack up financially, then is it worth even beginning? If that's the only mechanism upon which you're going to get judged, I think Lasse, it'd be an interesting conversation. He's written about this recently on LinkedIn. If we're just looking at FT and headcount and, pure financials, are we truly digitally transforming? Question mark. But to get to start, you need evidence to CFO in the business that it's going to pay back in some shape, form or other. I'm the same there as Lasse said, you need to think big, not rethinking processes, value streams, whatever else, again, causes scaling to be inhibited. Are you just doing the same thing you've done faster? What else? Not designing for humans, but designing for machines. Again, critically important to think, beyond what you're immediately doing. People have to use the technology. People are going to be impacted by the technology. If you're not doing it for them, who are you doing it for? Another thing, what about a digital and automation mindset? It's a different way of thinking, and we're seeing online in the chat, is it business strategy, technology strategy first? I'm sometimes chicken and egg there, because as soon as I know what technology does, I think big, I think scale. But if I don't know what it does, I'm rethinking my business in the same way. That said, look, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. Should you think a technology strategy first? I'm not sure. But it isn't one thing, Emma. You can bucket lots of reasons why automation and digital programs don't scale underneath, skill set, product set, mindset, and keep going for a long time. The good news is the frameworks are there. A lot of the lessons have been learned, so there's less opportunities to make mistakes.
Great, thank you. So what we're going to do now, as we're kind of rounding out the conversation, I'm going to give each one of you a crack at talking about our next topic, which is the idea of how do we overcome these challenges of scalability. So we've talked a little bit about, why is it important to have multiple tools? Do we look at our business processes and goals first, and some of the things that we think are getting in the way? But now let's help everybody understand from your expert opinions, what are the strategies that we can use to overcome some of these challenges? So first up, I'm going to go, actually, I can't remember the order that we discussed. So Faisal, I'm going to put you on the spot and have you be number 1. And we're going to start with that question of how do we overcome some of these challenges of scaling?
Yeah, so really important point. So just kind of building on from what Kieran said, and I love the way he kind of rhymed those out. Going to struggle to rhyme them myself, but if we kind of talk about the impediments and then talk about how do we kind of overcome those challenges. So when I think about some of those challenges that organizations have, so buy-in's always quite a big one. And when you're thinking of buy-in, it's the top-down buy-in, but then also bottom-up buy-in as well. So from the top-down perspective, you need to kind of get the right sponsorship in place. You need to make sure you get your CFO on board, your CIO on board. And then from a bottom-up perspective as well, you need to make sure you've got operations teams involved and to kind of get operations teams on the same journey as yourself. So what I've always found that works quite well of kind of overcoming that challenge around the buy-in is it's always sometimes quite good to just start small and prove the capability and prove that it works and prove the benefits, because then that kind of acts as a catalyst for people becoming believers, people becoming sponsors, and then people becoming champions going forward. So from a buy-in perspective, really important to really start proving the case for automation. Then the other piece as well is around kind of selecting the right processes and making sure that you're not using, for example, something like RPA as a sledgehammer. It's really important that when you're doing your process selection, that you follow the right frameworks and that you're not just automating for the sake of automating. You are looking at processes and you're first thinking about, can I simplify them? Can I eliminate them before you even think about automating? And if you do think about automating, make sure you're using the right tools and technology to automate those processes. Also, when you're doing the process selection as well, and it's just highlighting something that Kieran talked about as well, is just the benefits, because to really start scaling, you need to start delivering them benefits. And when you are looking at processes, I always say, look at it from a balanced scorecard perspective. It isn't just about kind of hours back to the business. Think about it a bit more widely. Think about it more from a customer lens. Think about it more from an even employee lens perspective, from a process performance perspective, from a whole holistic balanced scorecard. How does, by automating these processes, improve all of those different dimensions? So really think about, the balanced scorecard aspects of it. The other piece that I want to talk about a little bit as well is just strategy as well. So I mentioned it right at the front, but making sure that you've got a really good coherent strategy in place, good vision, good expectation, good KPIs, so that you can measure what you're going to achieve and what you're going to do, and how that strategy ties into your overall business strategy. And then just finally, just very, very quickly, just mentioned, Kieran briefly touched on COE. Now, I'm a massive fan of COEs, and I just really think that it's all about COEs when you're looking to drive scale. But make sure that the COEs are set up correctly. You've got the right capability in the centers of excellence. You've got the right frameworks. You've got the right governance model. You've got buy-in from the business around the center of excellence. And the COE is located in the right place as well. So there's always this kind of myth about, is this a business tool or is this an IT tool? We need to kind of debunk that now and say, look, it's a joint collaborative effort. Both need to be involved. If one function isn't involved, then this isn't going to work. So it's really important to kind of really overcome that.
And I think unintentionally, you actually answered a question perfectly that James Rose brought up in our comments early on in the broadcast, talking a little bit about that COE and how do you make that transition. So I just wanted to bring that up on the screen before we kind of move forward. And, one thing that you mentioned just reminded me of a comment that Paula, who's going to be joining us for our next third Thursday in February, said, when you were talking about, do these processes even need to exist? What are we doing to optimize the process on the front end before we bring automation in? And she had made a comment earlier this week about, bots don't need to check their math. So if you're just automating a process as a human would do it, you need to start thinking about the types of things that can be eliminated out of that process. And I thought that was like a very, that one sentence kind of went well with what you were saying. So Lasse, I'm going to bring you up and give you your time to talk about how do you believe that we overcome scaling issues?
Thank you very much. I actually just had written something down I wanted to touch upon, but I actually think I'm going to go another way a little bit initially. I'm going to pull it way back into IT again and say what you're doing wrong when you're trying to scale it is that you're talking about processes. There's so many things, with RPA being robotic process automation. It's not robotic, it's not about processes, but it is automating in some way, but everything IT is automation. It really is, So what you're saying is, instead of looking at the process, look at the systems. If you do that, you always get success. Look at what systems you have, how do you want them to connect? What systems do your sub vendor have? What systems do your client have? How do you connect to it? Can you connect to it? Can you not connect to it? Well, that's basically it, And then you can say, okay, the process doesn't make any sense. I've never seen anyone be like, oh, don't take my process away. It makes sense to me. Well, if it makes sense to them, that's because there's a business reason for it and you're missing it. But if you look at the systems and tie them together, everyone will be like, hey, makes sense, fine, move on, right? For me, scale is not about getting a lot of bots in. People tend to buy a lot of bots, buy some, invest in a guy sitting there doing RPA, invest in a big platform, setting it up and going big. And now they want some ROI back. And we invested this much money and we need to get a lot of bots. Forrester said it was 30 bots, then you're at scale. 30 bots what? Everyone knows that. That's a crappy thing. No one wants to measure on bots, right? For me, scale is when business needs are fulfilled and automated. And for me, scale is directly tied to the business model this way and your enterprise system model as well. You should not scale this or that technology solution. You should scale your enterprise by building the spider's web I mentioned before by using the right technology. So the biggest lack in the world today are enterprise architects able to actually understand what systems, processes, capabilities do we want to sort of fulfill our business purpose in this world. And that's what we need to look at. Take the systems, connect them to the business capabilities, say, are these systems connected? No, they're not. Move together with RPA, move it with a flow, move it with an LCAP, whatever you want to do, right? Scale is when you can look at the business and its internal and external dependencies and say, this is really seamlessly connected. Not when Gartner or Forrester thinks so, and not even when your management is happy to say they have a working RPA program. But let's be honest, everyone's like, oh, we have 5 RPA bots. Thank God. Oh, I'm on the hype curve now. I did once what I needed to do. I can tell back to all my friends, I have RPA now, and it's working really well. We had a lot of ROI over the 6 years. It's like that's a crappy thing. I'm not happy with having an ROI. I'm happy when things are moving seamlessly, connected, getting more cases in. If it's easy for you to get ROI in half a year, then you're not doing enough. It has to be hard. You have to move faster, right? Mentality is the biggest impediment. Ambition, that's all I'm asking for. Ambition, understanding base to move for an improvement. That's what you need to think about. If you don't understand the base, you don't understand the systems, don't even bother doing anything with IT. IT is IT. Automation is IT. And if you don't look at the IT landscape, understanding and how it's sort of under, so how it is a foundation for the business normative, the business objective, then you don't do it. You don't get to scale that way. So let's stop talking about processes. I'm sick and tired of automating processes. I want to automate systems and data flows because that's what it is. I have nothing more.
I think Michael, just do that to end that.
He did. We should end with a suspender slap, and then Kieran, we're going to come to you to have you share your thoughts on the idea as well. So you were the one that helped lay out some of those challenges initially. So what are your thoughts on helping to overcome them?
Gosh. Lots of things. I'll go back to the skill set, mindset, tool set bit, and I'll probably pick up on some of the things the guys have said there. Number one, you need the right team and you need the right partnerships in place. And, any organization that thinks you're going to digitally transform or automate without buying the right tool set, investing in the right people, having the right partnerships, and very often that's not necessarily partnerships within the business, but that's really key as well. IT, business, SME, automation team, they all need to work together, and comfortably. So, making sure your executive team's bought into that as well and are there, absolutely essential. I actually, want an executive sponsor. I want it to be a top 5 initiative, but even on top of that, I want their time, I want their energy, I want them going out and selling the program. If there's uncomfortable truths to be delivered, I want them explaining why it's absolutely essential, key and important, all those things. A lot of organizations sometimes bulk at bringing in a systems integrator and a partner or a consultant. You bring in the right partnership and, compliments to myself and Faisal. We worked together in a partnership years ago and still work and talk together, as is. If you can find the right team to work with you, bring them in, open everything up. Don't treat your partner as someone you're going to blame for everything and use as an excuse when things don't work. Find someone who culturally matches you. Walk in on that mindset thing with, a can do, must do, will do attitude. The saying goes, if you think you can, you will. And if you think you can't, you're probably right there as well. But part of that is incumbent upon organizations to help change mindsets. Digital transformation just doesn't happen because a board goes off for a jolly someday at a nice hotel, comes back and waves a digital transformation plan in people's faces and says, go make it happen. We'll see you in 2 years' time. You need to get people on board. I go back to that. What's the art of the possible? Why are we doing it? What's the business strategy? How can this complement it? What's your part to play in this? How we're going to create a bright and exciting future for you, for our customers. How are we going to drive, employee experience, customer experience? All that needs wrapped up in a brilliant change management program, a brilliant communication plan. There's mindset changes and to be happening that, maybe companies aren't familiar with, they're not comfortable with. So, for example, when Lasse mentioned a moment ago, the art of the feeling, things will fail when you move fast. And then digital world, you need to move fast. And that's scary for companies. And if an executive team is always hammering people to return ROI in every single moment, then your business is an accounting firm, not a real firm to some degree. I'm not arguing that you don't have a business case around what you're doing, but you have to accept failure. And it's not a negative. It's only a negative if you keep failing and you don't learn from the mistakes you had in the past. But you have to move fast, break things, learn, unlearn, and go again. But what else do we need? Great tools. I'm a fan of, there are great tools out on the network there. Everybody recognizes them, and it's not just RPA, it's other, analytics tools and a whole host of other digital tools that exist. I think you'll end up with a collection of tools, but I do think you have to be careful as well, because ultimately if you keep buying tool, then every time you go to do something, your change management becomes incredibly complex. And over time, you're building a great deal of cost into your organization. So I would put a digital layer on, a glue in the middle, that's probably RPA, APIs, a whole host of other stuff. and then a backbone at the bottom that doesn't really change, you know, an ERP system, whatever it needs to be, something industrial, so that you can work, build things, throw them away, and go again. And then ultimately, you know, that change management program's wrapped around it. And I would just say, look, just do it, go for it. I think we're definitely in a period of digital Darwinism. Like those firms that invest will thrive and survive. Those firms that don't invest probably won't survive. And that's where we're at. So I don't think it's one thing to solve. I think it's lots of things.
Well, we've got a whopping 15 seconds to go on our technically scheduled time, but I want to take the time to thank everybody for joining us here today. It's so exciting to see the comments coming in and seeing the community that we're building around this third Thursday broadcast. And we will be sharing more information about February's episode coming up to the group that you guys were all a part of, so keep an eye out for that. But Faisal and Lasse, thank you for joining us and for all of your energy, and the suspender slap at the end, I feel like may have been the highlight of the broadcast today. For anybody that asked questions or had comments, we're going to be going back and looking at all of that, so there will be more to come on the post of the video after the fact. But thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next third Thursday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.